Today we're checking out the Vox Valvenergy series, which is an all-analog tube amp modeling pedal series from Vox. It's using Korg's NuTube technology, and there's 3 different ways that we can set it up. So you can use it either as a standard overdrive pedal, where you can kind of influence a certain flavor, maybe like an AC30 flavor, to your Supro amp or to your Mesa Boogie. The second mode is that you can use it as a preamp, so you can either go into something that's going to power a guitar cabinet, where this pedal is going to act essentially as an amp head, or if you have an amp with an effects loop, just send your line into the effects return, and in that case it's acting just as I said before, as a cabinet. And then lastly, the third way you can use this pedal is as a full-on amp simulator. It actually has some cabinet simulation built in, so when you flip to that third mode, it's going to apply, I'm not sure, either it's an impulse response or just a specific EQ curve emulating a cabinet. But all 3 modes sound really great, and we'll get a chance to listen to them. If you want to skip the technical talk, you can just check out the timestamps in the description for some playing samples in those 3 contexts. Now this pedal line, like I mentioned, is using Korg's NuTube technology. So this is a system where they've figured out a way to essentially shrink down a tube to about 30% the size that it normally was, and use less than 2% of the power ordinarily required. Tube amps are very high wattage. You know, they might be able to run on 120 or 240, but there's a step-up converter inside the amplifier, and the wattage inside tube amps is very, very high. What's cool about using an overdrive pedal that actually uses a tube for the saturation instead of a solid state pedal, a traditional overdrive pedal that uses transistors or op amps, is that we retain a lot of the same warmth and the feeling of a true tube amp. So to get technical for a second, to compare tubes and solid state amplification, if you looked at a chart that would essentially show you the overtone series that's amplified either by a tube or a solid state amplifier, a solid state amplifier will amplify an overtone series 100% perfectly, in an ideal world anyway. So the overtone series is made up of, you've got your fundamental, which is the note you're playing, then you've got the octave, that's the second partial, then you've got the third partial, which is the fifth, there's another octave above that, then a major third, which is slightly sharp, then a fifth, which is slightly sharp, then we have a dominant seventh, the flat seventh, which is actually a little bit flat, then we have a ninth, a sharp 11th, and you keep going. There's a whole series. That's what the overtone series is. So the solid state amplification amplifies everything evenly, whereas the tube prefers the ones that are especially consonant to that note that you're playing. So it'll pick the root, the octave, the fifth, the octave, the fifth, maybe a third up higher. And just by comparing them, you can see why a tube sounds a little bit more warm to our ears than a solid state amp. Now, if I haven't bored you with the technical talk yet, let's take a second and discuss the 4 different offerings that Vox has in this pedal series. I've got the Mystic Edge, which is an AC30 emulation. I was actually considering buying an AC30 myself. About this time last year, I was working on the Queen Mary. It's a cruise ship. And I was in Southampton, came across a really cool guitar store called, I think, the Guitar Store. It's got a little amp in front of it. And I came across a really great example of a hand-wired Vox AC30. It was a C1, used, really great price. I was planning on buying it, Ubering back to the ship, and then just transporting it to New York, and I would leave it with a friend and pick it up whenever the contract was over. And I did a little bit of research, and I figured it was just going to be too much work to make the conversion from 240 volts to 120 for American power. So I just decided not to get it, and this was a really great way for me to get a Vox AC30 style sound with the tube amps that I already have. It definitely saved me a lot of money and the backache of owning an actual AC30. Now they also have the Copperhead, which I believe is a Marshall Plexi style circuit made to emulate the sound of a Marshall Plexi. There's the Cutting Edge, which is not really my taste. That's for high gain stuff, for like a Mesa Boogie dual rectifier, something like that. And then lastly, the Silk Drive, which I almost bought, but I figured I already have a couple Dumble style offerings in solid state pedals, so I just decided just to stick with the AC30 for now. There is a couple cool ways you can set them up. So if you own one or more of the Valvenergy series, you can actually link them with a little TRS 1/8 inch connection. So essentially, when you do this, you'll be able to switch amplifiers. You'll be able to do channel switching like you would in your normal tube amp. If you have an amp with a clean channel and an overdrive channel, this will work in the same way. So as you bypass one, the other one is going to turn on. And you can essentially have an AC30 and a Dumble, or an AC30 and a Plexi, or you can actually chain all four of them together. So you can have something that might resemble a 4-channel amplifier with 4 distinctly different sounds. I think it's pretty cool. It's a great idea. Now that all the technical stuff is out of the way, let's just take a listen to the Mystic Edge set up in stomp box mode, and we'll be running straight into the front of my Supro 1622 with a Shure SM7B. So now we're going to switch the Mystic Edge into preamp mode, where it's effectively acting as a preamplifier of an AC30. We'll be running into the effects return of the Mesa Boogie Express over there, and what's happening is it's outputting a line level signal heading into the effects return. It's bypassing all of the actual amp controls. There's no preamp happening in the Mesa Boogie, and in this case we're basically just using it as a guitar cabinet. Now lastly, we're going to check out the third mode, which is when we're applying a cabinet simulation to this pedal. And I'm not sure if it's an IR or a very specific EQ curve, but it's great. You can use it as a full-on amp simulator in the same way that you would the Helix, the Strymon Iridium, Fractal, AXFX, or any of the other amp modelers out there. The difference is it's full analog. It's got a tube inside it, it's got the tube feel. It's a really cool idea. So if you're going to use it in this way, I strongly suggest using a direct box. More appropriately, actually, what you'll need is a line isolator. You can check out the Pinstripe Pedals MISO, stands for mono isolation. That's a direct box essentially designed specifically to work with amp modelers. That's the best thing you can have. So there was the 3 different ways that we can use the new Vox Valvenergy series. I think it's a really versatile pedal to have on your board. It can serve a lot of different purposes, and for that reason, it'll be a great thing to have for people that are on fly gigs or on a tour where you have to rely on backline amps. If you show up and it's a deluxe and you love a Fender Deluxe sound, cool, plug straight into the front of it and you can use your Valvenergy pedal as a stomp box, as essentially an overdrive. If you show up to the gig and the backline offering is something that you're not really a fan of, just go into the effects return. You can use the Valvenergy pedal as a preamp. And lastly, if they don't have a backline, or if the backline doesn't have an effects loop, or if it's just terrible in general, you can just go direct and have a monitor wedge set up in front of you. So 3 different ways that you can use the Vox Valvenergy series. Let me know what you thought of how it sounded. Are you interested in picking this one up? And out of the 4, which one do you think would suit your playing styles? I would love to hear your own opinion of this pedal. If you like the way this video was laid out, make sure you subscribe to the channel and maybe consider checking out some of the other gear demos I have. I'm sure you're going to be hearing a lot more from this Mystic Edge, and I might even pick up the Silk Drive in a month or 2. So you can check out the shopping links as well from Zounds for the Vox Valvenergy series. Take care. I'll see you in the next video.